There are periods in life when you sense like you're ascending a peak shrouded in haze. No companion at your flank, no one applauding, no one observing. You persist striding, persist attempting, persist honoring your pledge to yourself. Yet the exterior realm appears eerily mute. No one utters, "I'm proud of you." No one discerns the mute skirmishes you've waged, and at times you inquire of yourself, is it worthwhile when no one beholds it? But it's precisely in that isolation where an alternate form of fortitude commences to crystallize, a fortitude that doesn't necessitate acclaim or endorsement. Carl Jung once asserted that each rebirth commences with dissolution. When there's no one left to rely on, it's not the finale. It's a cue that your spirit is gearing for a fresh phase where you evolve into your own reservoir of potency. In this video, we'll traverse that voyage, the 7 strides to ascend, even when no one lingers at your flank. It's in the instant you cease awaiting someone to elevate you that you unveil a deep verity. All you've ever pursued in the exterior realm, fortitude, affection, serenity, has perpetually been internal, awaiting rousing. And when that transpires, you don't solely ascend, you commence to voyage with your own radiance. Number 1, solitude, the mute instructor of fortitude. There are instants in existence when the realm appears to retreat. Familiar exchanges no longer invigorate you. Individuals who once voyaged with you commence to sense remote. All on the exterior lingers unaltered. Your profession, your bonds. Yet internally you comprehend something is altering. No one conveys this is the onset of evolution because all are apprehensive of this phase. But for Carl Jung, this is the inaugural cue of the nocturnal sea voyage, the somber eve of the spirit, when you no longer resonate with the antiquated realm, and to stride into the fresh, you must traverse your most profound obscurity, solitude. The solitude Jung recounted isn't about physical isolation in a vacant chamber. It's the sensation of detachment from all that once rendered you sense affiliation. You still grin, still converse, but profoundly you comprehend what's transpiring around you no longer contacts your spirit. The realm appears to converse a dialect you no longer comprehend, and you're left solely with yourself. All presume that attaining this juncture signifies misfortune. But in verity, it's the instant your spirit commences to segregate from the communal persona, the disguise that once aided you to conform. The sensation that no one comprehends me isn't a cue you've forfeited your direction. It's evidence that you're advancing nearer to your authentic self. Jung believed that an individual solely genuinely matures when they venture to confront themselves in isolation. Not when someone attends, but when all external clamour turns mute, and you're compelled to discern your inner whisper. During this phase, all forfeit direction and flee into labour, bonds, diversions that aid them to liberate the emptiness. But the more they evade it, the grander that emptiness expands. Solitude doesn't arrive to debilitate you, it arrives to deepen you, to aid you in reconstructing your bedrock from within. I once comprehended a woman who, following her severance, descended into a condition of disorientation. She had perpetually been encircled by companions and mirth, but when all disintegrated, her abode evolved alarmingly mute. Instead of populating the void with rendezvous or labour, she mastered reposing in quietude. At first, solely for a few instants, then progressively for hours, she cooked for herself, perused, reflected, and confronted the inquiries she'd perpetually evaded. Months later, she recounted, "I discerned quietude is no longer my foe. It's where I finally discern myself." That was what Jung designated the encounter with the self. The instant you cease fleeing and commence reclaiming home. When there's no one to depend on, That compression compels you to cultivate discipline and inner steadiness. Like a climber without a safety cord, each stride evolves a deliberate selection. Each enactment a pledge to yourself. And each pledge honored evolves a brick that erects your fortitude. Solitude doesn't arrive to debilitate you. It arrives to render you unshakable. It's the spirit's gymnasium where your essence is forged into iron. Retrospectively, you'll discern that those serene months were when you were most potent. The emblem of an oak in winter perpetually cues me of that. When all other arboreals shed foliage, the oak stands solitary in the frigid breeze. No blossoms, no hue. But during that winter, its roots burrow more profoundly, gearing for spring. Humans are identical. Each solitary season is the spirit's winter. But if you're forbearing enough to linger, you'll discern spring awaits behind it. Jung once said, "In all disarray, there is a harmony. In all tumult, a concealed structure." If you're standing in the obscurity of solitude, don't be apprehensive. It's not a cue of frailty. It's evidence that you're departing the antiquated path to unlock a fresh one. Because the spirit, to be reborn, must first dissolve. And solely when the realm is mute can you discern the whisper within murmur. It's time to ascend. Recall, no one is arriving to elevate you. But that's not adverse tidings, because in that precise instant, authentic fortitude is born. No one can bestow you resilience, but solitude will instruct you how to forge it. Each instance you traverse a protracted eve, you're not solely conquering apprehension, you're recasting your narrative. Number 2, cease pursuing emotional solace from others. At a juncture, following mastering to stand resolute in isolation, you discern something profound. What depletes us isn't solitude, it's presuming someone else will populate it. Carl Jung once asserted, "Solitude doesn't originate from having no individuals around you, but from being incapable of communicating the elements that signify most." When you depend on others to render you sense secure, each quietude, retreat, or unmet reply feels like disintegration. That isn't affection, it's emotional reliance, which Jung perceived as the hallmark of an unmerged surface self. After the phase of the solitary combatant, the subsequent lesson is mastering how to solace yourself. When you cease pursuing reassurance and endorsement from the exterior, that's when the self commences to assume command. I once encountered a woman in a communal remedy gathering. She confessed that she nearly panicked whenever her companion didn't reply to her messages. She would scrutinize her device scores of times, envisioning the worst. "I comprehend it's irrational," she said, "but when he's mute, I sense like I don't subsist." After months of remedy, she unearthed the apprehension didn't originate from him. It originated from her youth. Whenever she was melancholic, her guardians would retort, "Don't be theatrical or veer away." Her subconscious mastered, "Your sentiments don't signify." And ever since, she pursued someone to authenticate otherwise. Jung called that the snare of emotional projection. When we utilize others as mirrors to ascertain our merit, when they reply, we sense valuable. When they retreat, we forfeit direction. But the verity is, no one can perpetually be your redeemer. The more you depend on others for steadiness, the more you forfeit the aptitude to modulate yourself. Self-solace doesn't signify frigidity or detachment. It signifies evolving the one who attends to your own sentiments. When melancholy ascends, instead of fleeing to locate someone to soothe it, you linger, position your palm on your essence, and murmur, "I'm still present." That modest enactment is the onset of emotional self-rule, a vital phase of wholeness. When you cease merging with the communal and evolve an autonomous self, An individual who comprehends how to solace themselves doesn't necessitate perpetual replies to sense valuable. They don't require prompt replies or commendations to persist. They can repose serenely in a cafe, relishing their brew solitary, sensing integral in that instant. That's not frigidity. It's the paramount manifestation of liberty. Liberty from the necessity to be endorsed. Jung said that all manifestations of reliance are the shadow of affection. We designate it attachment, but it's genuinely apprehension of desertion. The immature surface self craves someone to authenticate its merit. But when you gaze profoundly into that apprehension, you discern it's not emptiness. It's a summons to evolve the guardian you once required but never possessed. And then you comprehend what you presumed you required someone else to aid. You endure. You've perpetually possessed the potency to enact all along. In contemporary thought, this is called emotional self-rule. It's not repudiating affection or linkage. It's declining to relinquish regulation of your sentiments to all else. You still cherish, still connect, but you don't forfeit yourself when bonds alter. When someone departs, you lament, but you don't disintegrate. When someone turns mute, you attend, but you don't forfeit your merit. An individual with emotional self-rule doesn't necessitate a redeemer. They can elevate themselves, liberate their own tears, and persist striding. And solely from that expanse can they cherish voraciously, not from necessity, but from selection. Perhaps that's what Jung signified when he said, "The lifetime privilege is evolving who you genuinely are." Because when you cease pursuing solace from others, you commence discerning your own potency, a potency that doesn't depend, doesn't borrow, and can't be appropriated. From the instant you cease awaiting someone to render you blissful, you commence to mature. And if you're in that phase now, no one comprehends, no one consoles, no one elevates you up, recall, it's secure. No one arriving doesn't signify you're solitary. It solely signifies it's time to stand on your own two bases. Murmur serenely to yourself, "I don't necessitate all to liberate me. I just require refraining from forsaking myself." That's the subsequent stride, and the pivot to ascending even when no one is there. And if you're in that phase now, mastering to stand solitary with no one comprehending or consoling you, perceive it as a cue that your spirit is maturing. Convey to me you're still present by omitting one term in the remarks. Still as a cue that even when no one stands at your flank, you still opt to stand with yourself. Number 3, cease lamenting. The dialect of the casualty surface self. After you've mastered to stand resolute in isolation and solace yourself, another subtle but exacting examination emerges. Cease lamenting. Lamenting is how the surface self maintains you moored in your secure zone, the expanse where you gain to perceive yourself as the casualty. It persuades you that you harbor rationale not to alter. But the irony is this: each instance you lament, you fortify the conviction that you're impotent, subconsciously dispatching the cue, "I harbor no potency." Carl Jung called this the shadow of self-pity. When you're confined in that obscurity, you cease enacting and commence reiterating the identical inquiry, "Why me?" As if the cosmos is inequitable, as if the realm owes you an elucidation. But the authentic inquiry isn't "Why me?" It's "What can I enact with this?" The instant you alter that inquiry, the vitality confined in lament commences to flow anew. Jung once said, "Until you render the subconscious conscious, it will direct your existence and you'll designate it destiny." Each instance you lament, your subconscious is directing the spectacle, evolving you into a casualty of scenario. But when you gaze beneath the sentiment that propels your lament, you stride beyond the shadow and evolve the one directing awareness anew. Lamenting is a cunning routine of the intellect. It renders you sense like you're enacting something, but in verity, you're lingering stationary. Each lament is a manifestation of deferred enactment. When you're preoccupied faulting scenarios, you forfeit the vitality to transmute them. Others may injure you, but solely you can resolve whether that injury evolves a fetter or a lesson. Contemplate a boulder at the base of a current. The torrent is potent. It abrades. It collides. It bears the boulder away. But over duration, the identical torrent that appeared destructive polishes the boulder until it evolves smooth and luminous. Existence is identical. It doesn't halt because you lament. It persists flowing, persists examining, persists shaping you. But if you endure the torrent instead of denouncing it, you'll evolve more resilient, lucid, more exquisite than prior. Lamenting nurtures the casualty surface self, the facet of you that perpetually requires all else to assume accountability for your affliction. That surface self adores to sense pitied because as long as you're a casualty, you're exempt from accountability. But that's also the most constricted manner to linger confined. On the contrary, each instance you cease lamenting and assume enactment regardless. Of magnitude, you recapture the vitality forfeited to your subconscious. You ascend not because someone propels you, but because you opt not to linger in the obscurity any longer. Lamenting frequently commences with minor sentences. I'm so depleted. No one comprehends me. I attempt so diligently, but no one discerns. Those utterances appear innocuous, but they serenely nurture and surface self that presumes bliss hinges on all else. Truly potent individuals don't necessitate the realm to console them. They can survey their affliction directly, acknowledge it, and inquire, now, what can I enact? A spectator once recounted with me that following her companion's treachery, she expended 6 months engulfed in acrimony. I recounted to all who would attend how awful they were, she said, but I discerned I was recounting the identical narrative for half a year. That eve, she inscribed in her reflection journal, if no one was present to attend me lamenting, would I still recount this narrative? The reply was no. The subsequent days she commenced inscribing about what she desired to evolve, to transmute, to fabricate. It wasn't them departing that wounded me, she said. It was that I clung to the narrative too protracted. Ceasing lamenting doesn't signify repudiating affliction. It signifies no longer existing in it. You can still sense melancholy, disillusionment, grief, but instead of retelling the scar, you employ that vitality to erect something fresh. Each enactment, regardless of magnitude, is a proclamation to the cosmos. I am no longer a casualty of this. Carl Jung once asserted, I am not what transpired to me. I am what I select to evolve. And that selection to cease lamenting and commence enacting is the portal to a fresh stratum of fortitude. Each instance you cease uttering why me and commence inquiring what can I enact with this you undertake, an additional stride onward, because ultimately that's how you ascend even when no one is there. Not through pity, but through the serene fortitude of assuming accountability for your own evolution. And then you'll discern you were never genuinely solitary. You were just too preoccupied lamenting to discern your own spirit summoning. Number 4, evolve into your own reservoir of endorsement. Number 4, evolve into your own reservoir of endorsement. After you've ceased lamenting and commenced to enact, a more profound examination awaits. The quietude of being unseen, you stand resolute. You labor diligently. You bestow your finest. Yet no one lauds you, no one acknowledges you, no one appears to discern. This is the juncture where all forfeit. not because they dread hardship, but because they dread invisibility. But it's precisely at this instant of no acclaim that the cosmos examines whether you can persist without the spotlight. Carl Jung once asserted, "The most alarming element is complete self-acceptance." Because when you genuinely endorse yourself, you no longer conceal behind others' perceptions. You don't necessitate commendations. You don't necessitate proof. You don't necessitate beholders to your merit, because you've evolved into your own beholder. I'm reminded of Cassandra in Greek mythology, the woman endowed by Apollo with the potency of foresight, but cursed so that no one would accredit her. She discerned the verity, discerned catastrophes prior to their arrival, but all veered away, designating her deranged. Yet even in isolation, Cassandra didn't turn mute. She persisted uttering, remained loyal to what she discerned, even when all omitted. At a more profound stratum, her narrative is a metaphor for each potent spirit, those who persist honoring their verity in quietude, even when the realm declines to behold them. At times, being accredited isn't as paramount as persisting veracious to yourself. Similarly, in contemporary existence, all bestow their all solely to encounter quietude. I once conversed with a woman who, following years of commitment, was perpetually the ultimate one in her office at Eve. Yet, when accolades arrived, her superior lauded another. "I sensed imperceptible," she said. One day she resolved to cease labouring to be discerned and commence labouring to discern herself. Each instance she consummated a venture, she documented what she'd accomplished. Adeptly recompensed herself with a serene afternoon, a brew, a text. "I discerned external endorsement lingers for instants," she said, "but self-discernment lingers for days." That's the pivot from the reliant surface self to the self, the evolved equilibrium of awareness. In Jungian thought, those who subsist from the self enact, not for acclaim, but because it's an emanation of who they are. They don't necessitate spectators to comprehend their merit. Because their merit doesn't originate from acclaim, it originates from the resonance of inner verity. External endorsement in the finale is solely an echo. Those who haven't discerned their own radiance will perpetually pursue it in others' eyes. But those who've discerned it within convey it wherever they voyage. They no longer necessitate all else to accredit because their reliance has evolved their bedrock. Jung once stated, "Comprehending your own obscurity is the finest manner for contending with the obscurities of all else." When you venture to plunge into your own essence to discern both your frailty and your fortitude, you no longer necessitate the realm to authenticate all to you. You're no longer dominated by the apprehension of not adequate, because now you are adequate simply because you comprehend it. Self-endorsement isn't haughtiness. It's the most profound manifestation of self-honor. It's comprehending you're still en route, still imperfect. Yet you uphold yourself with both palms, radiance and shadow alike. Those who can endorse themselves don't repudiate their flaws. They discern them as proof of evolution. Oversights don't diminish their merit. They render their voyage more authentic. Contemplate how steel is forged. Metal hardens solely when exposed to blaze. The identical applies to the spirit. Solitude, disregard, and absence of acclaim are the blazes that fortify your equilibrium. When no one else endorses you, you're compelled to gaze inward. And in that gaze, you unearth something extraordinary. You're far more resilient than you presumed. And when you genuinely welcome that, something wondrous transpires. You commence to glow from within. Others may not utter a term, but they sense your attendance. Steady, serene, anchored. Not because you attempt to shine, but because you no longer necessitate to authenticate. Recall, Each acclaim fades, each gaze ultimately veers away. But your own gaze, if it's temperate and candid, evolves a blaze that never perishes. And that's the mystery of those who ascend even when no one stands at their flank. If you sense the potency of self-endorsement, of no longer pursuing the realm's eyes but discerning yourself lucidly, strike like on this clip. That will be your cue to the cosmos. I'm prepared to be my own reservoir of radiance. Number 5. Ascend promptly. Number 5. Ascend promptly. Convert misfortune into blaze. Have you ever pondered why even following evolving more resilient and serene, existence still renders you tumble? Especially when no one is there to elevate you. Misfortune, in its truest essence, isn't about forfeiture or defeat. It's that instant when you falter precisely on the voyage you presumed most. The occasions you presumed you'd vanquished your surface self solely for one minor occurrence or term to dislodge you anew, you sense frail, ashamed, and in that isolation you're enticed to revert to the gratifying iteration, all else once cherished solely to gain acclaim anew. But as Jung taught, those tumbles don't arrive to annihilate you. They arrive to unveil the facets of you that linger unremedied, the ones still awaiting unification and affection. Each instance you tumble, the shadow re-emerges. It's not penalty, it's enlightenment. It casts radiance on your concealed haughtiness, your apprehension of censure, your craving for endorsement. And the instant you ascend anew without acclaim or endorsement, your self expands. In an epistle to Freud, Jung inscribed, "Oversights are, after all, the bedrock of verity. Misfortune doesn't debilitate you, it renders you authentic. Because solely when no one apprehends you do you evolve how to voyage with your own fortitude." I once comprehended a woman who managed a modest enterprise. After years of endeavor, she was betrayed by her Kyo founder and forfeited nearly all. For months, she subsisted in culpability and apprehension. But one day, her specialist inquired, "If this isn't a finale but a lesson, what is it instructing you?" She turned mute, then said, "Perhaps I never genuinely attended to my instinct." From then, she commenced reflecting daily, not to lament, but to inscribe what she was evolving, to transmute, to fabricate. A year later, she recommenced her enterprise, diminutive but steadier. "I'm no longer apprehensive of faltering," she said, "because each falter evolves me more candid with myself." That's how misfortune evolves into blaze. You can't evolve in security because security lulls the subconscious to slumber. But when you strike nadir, each stratum of pretense incinerates away and your spirit stands bare. From a neuroscience viewpoint, when you falter, the brain activates the anterior cingulate cortex, the zone that processes the disparity between anticipation and verity. If you reply with apprehension or self-reproach, your form liberates cortisol, the tension hormone that immobilizes you. But when you assume enactment, even a minor stride, your prefrontal cortex activates, liberating dopamine, the chemical of advancement and aspiration. In other utterances, remorse immobilizes you, but enactment mends you. Contemplate the phoenix, the legendary fowl that regenerates by incinerating itself. Whenever it ages, it plunges into blazes to liberate its ashes, then ascends anew, more luminous and unbound. Humans are identical. If you venture to ascend from your own ashes, you'll discern that what incinerated away wasn't you. It was solely the covering that had fulfilled its role. Jung once said, "There is no path to awareness without discomfort. When we confront misfortune without evaluation, scars cease to be adversaries and evolve instructors. In affliction, awareness is born. And solely when we contact our scars can we genuinely contact our humanity. In each misfortune, you harbour two selections. Permit it to delineate you, or permit it to refine you. When you utter, "I'm a misfortune," you confine yourself in the past. But when you utter, "I'm evolving something," you unlock a portal to the future. Nadir is never the finale. It's the terrain you propel from. Potent spirits aren't born from solace. They're forged in disintegration. Just as metal evolves into steel solely after enduring blaze, humans discern their authentic fortitude when they confront misfortune and decline to retreat. Recall, faltering doesn't render you frail. Lingering down does. When you liberate the ashes, confront your oversight, and undertake an additional stride, even a minor one, you're recasting your narrative. One day, you'll discern that each misfortune bore a revered aim. It didn't arrive to fracture you. It arrived to unveil the truer, more luminous, steadier iteration of you. So don't await someone to elevate you. Ascend promptly, resolutely, with an essence still temperate. That instant, you don't solely surmount misfortune. You evolve into the blaze that nothing can extinguish. Number 6. Enact without relying on inspiration. Will over sentiment. After mastering to ascend from your tumbles, a more profound lesson awaits: to enact even when you don't sense prepared. Because if isolation forged your fortitude, discipline will render you shine. Jung inscribed that will is the vitality adept at reorganizing the entire psyche. It's not solely the potency to enact, but the potency to transcend ephemeral sentiment in service of enduring significance. When you enact solely from inspiration, your surface self still dominates, the facet of you that perpetually pursues solace. But when you enact beyond sensation, you no longer necessitate motivation because you've yielded to a superior harmony, the harmony of the self, where enactment emanates from aim, not temperament. Inspiration is offering, but discipline is the bedrock. There will be days when you sense no motivation, no aspiration, no sensation of significance. But if on those days you still recline, still persist even one minor stride, you're instructing your paramount potency, will over sentiment. Jung said that all forfeit their vital essence, awaiting inspiration, instead of cultivating will. If you solely reply when you sense invigorated, your existence will be replete with onsets but vacant of mastery. Because inspiration is breeze, it arrives and departs, but will is course. It sustains the vessel advancing even when the breeze perishes. I'm reminded of thought specialist Angela Duckworth, who devised the notion of grit, the endurance of fervour and perseverance. As a youth, she wasn't the most astute scholar, but instead of presuming she wasn't adequate, she opted to presume she could endure more protracted. Years of inquiry led her to discern that exceptional achievers aren't the most adept, but those who reply when fervour fades, especially when no one applauds. Jung once asserted, "Liberty of will is the aptitude to gladly enact what I must enact." Liberty isn't enacting what you relish, it's gladly enacting what's essential. When you transcend your sentiments, you cease being their casualty and evolve their navigator. A companion of mine, a solitary guardian labouring two professions, once conveyed to me she roused at 5 a.m. each day, cooking, labouring, subsisting. There arrived a juncture when she was utterly depleted. "I forfeited all fervour," she said. But one day when her son inquired, "Mother, what transpired to your aspiration?" something in her pivoted. That eve she resolved to recommence, not for inspiration, but for accountability to herself. She commenced diminutive, rousing 15 instants earlier to peruse, inscribing 3 daily aims, conserving all spare currency for her aspiration confectionery. Some days she was depleted, but she persisted. "I ceased awaiting motivation," she said. "I solely required will because my son requires to discern his mother, not relinquish." A year later, she unveiled a diminutive confectionery. No one aided, no one encouraged, but she persisted striding. She evolved that willpower isn't a sensation. It's a verdict to persist even when your essence senses burdensome. This narrative cues us what inspiration doesn't forge will. Will forges inspiration. When you commence, you don't necessitate to sense prepared. You solely necessitate to be candid with your inaugural stride. Inspiration will follow as recompense for perseverance. Potent-willed individuals aren't emotionless. They solely don't permit sentiment to dominate them. They still apprehend, doubt, and tire, but they reply for something grander, for merits, pledges, coherence. Each instance they enact what's accurate instead of what's effortless. They fortify the bridge between awareness and spirit, between the minor surface self and the evolved self. One day you'll discern that your most delineating evolution didn't transpire in instants of exhilaration, but in instants of opposition, especially when you were solitary with no cues or encouragement. Those are the instants that evolve you, not because they're effortless, but because you decline to permit temperament or isolation to dictate your course. So if today you sense uninspired, unseen, unsupported, recall, you don't necessitate all that to advance. You solely necessitate one minor verdict to commence. Not flawlessly, not dramatically. Simply commence, and then uniformity will bear you more distant than all who ever attempted to aid you to the distant shore of yourself. If you've ever been compelled to persist solitary, without motivation, without endorsement, directed solely by will, recount your narrative in the remarks, because perhaps your narrative will be the minor blaze that sustains all else from relinquishing today. Number 7. You don't necessitate all to comprehend you. All you pursue is within. There arrives an instant, after all the mute endeavour, when you discern you've enacted. All accurate, persisted striding, persisted secure, persisted loyal to the path. Yet the exterior realm lingers mute. No one comprehends. No one comprehends. No one utters, "Thank you," and in that quietude, a subtle emptiness ascends. Do all these endeavours even signify? That's the ultimate lesson. When no one lingers to rely on, you must locate your own radiance. When you crave comprehension, you're still inquiring all else to authenticate your existence. But no one can genuinely comprehend you because solely you comprehend how profound your inner voyage has been. Carl Jung once inscribed, "Your sights will evolve lucid solely when you can gaze into your own essence." All the replies you pursue are already within your subconscious. You solely require sufficient quietude to discern them. After years of existing to be comprehended, you evolve that not all harbour the capacity to discern you at your profundity. At times they solely discern the facets that render them secure, and that's not their fault. In a realm where all are pursuing themselves, few can genuinely discern another's spirit. When you cease presuming comprehension from the exterior, you commence the reclamation inward, where all your contradictions commence to harmonize. Apprehension and bravery, affliction and mending, obscurity and radiance. There you no longer necessitate all else to affirm that you are adequate. You solely require comprehending that you are being veracious to your spirit, and that's adequate. When that transpires, you cease pursuing redeemers because you've evolved into your own. I once heard the narrative of a youthful artisan who, following years of crafting for trends and commerce, descended into creative depletion. One day she liberated the metropolis, leased a diminutive abode by the lagoon, and severed all linkage for a month. she crafted anew, not to exhibit, not to vend, but to attend to what her spirit desired to recount. When she reclaimed, her craft had altered, raw, vibrant, replete with spirit. A gallery in Berlin discerned her fresh oeuvre by happenstance and summoned her to exhibit. She recounted, "When I ceased attempting to be discerned, individuals commenced to genuinely discern me. That's the paradox Jung delineated. When you cease pursuing externally, you evolve an equilibrium of inward gravity. Because creative vitality, affection, and insight don't originate from being comprehended. They originate from embracing yourself, even the facets all else omits. Like a beacon in the nocturnal sea, it doesn't boisterously declare to be discerned, nor veer to pursue a claim. It simply stands shining, and by enacting so, navigates all who are adrift. Humans are identical. When you stand in your own radiance without necessitating a claim, your attendance itself evolves navigation for all else. Carl Jung once said, "Who gazes externally dreams, who gazes internally roused. When you cease inquiring the realm, who am I? And commence inquiring yourself, what do I genuinely require?" The shroud of the subconscious commences to elevate. The psychotherapist Carl Rogers once stated, "The inquisitive paradox is that when I embrace myself just as I am, then I can evolve. No one will ever fully comprehend you, but that doesn't signify you can't be cherished. Because authentic affection doesn't necessitate full comprehension, solely full reception. And when you master embracing yourself in all your intricacy, profundity, and contradictions, you emanate an vitality that renders all else sense secure proximate to you. Strangely, the instant you cease pursuing someone to comprehend you, you commence to be comprehended, not through utterances, but through attendance. The ones who genuinely pertain in your existence will sense it without elucidation. If existence has ever depleted you with the necessity to be comprehended, repose, recline in quietude, position your palm over your essence, and attend. That whisper within, faint but steadfast, comprehends the path. It comprehends where to advance, what to liberate, and how to recommence liberating your own tears and commence evolving more of who you are with superior limits and more lucid intents. Because Carl Jung was accurate when he said, "Your sight evolves lucid when you gaze into your essence. Who gazes externally dreams, who gazes internally rouses, and a roused individual's benevolence is unshakable." But now the ultimate verity Jung would desire you to comprehend. The individuals who resent your benevolence are actually your paramount instructors. They're unveiling precisely where you necessitate firmer limits, clearer intents, and more profound self-embrace. They're not adversaries, they're mirrors. And when you can discern them as mirrors instead of perils, you've mastered the skill of benevolence in a realm that at times can't tolerate benevolence. This is what Jung called the transcendent function, the aptitude to embrace paradox, to be benevolent and resilient, empathetic and secure, insightful and safeguarded. And this is the expertise Jung discovered. When you can be benevolent without necessitating a claim, helpful without necessitating appreciation, and empathetic without necessitating endorsement, you've attained what Jung termed psychological liberty. You're no longer a casualty of others' projections, and you're no longer a captive of your own necessity for endorsement. You're simply, authentically, powerfully benevolent, and that alters everything. Recall, the individuals who resent your benevolence are displaying their scars, not your frailties. Your role is to persist benevolent while safeguarding your vitality, establishing limits, and selecting bonds with those who can esteem your authentic nature. Because, as Carl Jung ultimately discerned, The realm doesn't necessitate less benevolence. It necessitates more individuals who are benevolent from fortitude, not frailty. And now you comprehend the variance. Now you possess Jung's roadmap to benevolent in a realm that at times can't tolerate benevolence. The choice is yours. The potency is yours. The liberty is yours. Employ it judiciously. Thank you so much for lingering with me through this voyage. If you located merit in today's discourse, don't omit to subscribe to the channel and share this clip with someone who might derive from it. This genuinely aids in sustaining this channel onward.